Hey, welcome to Frankly Festivals, the podcast that explores the world of film events and filmmakers in an attempt to demystify each other's pressures and interests, and to foster greater cooperation, understanding, and a stronger festival industry. I'm John Gann.
And I'm Bart Weiss.
So last month, we spoke to Sky Sitney and Mark Rabinowitz about the history of film festivals. It was a great conversation, and I think we gleaned quite a bit of information. Today, we're going to focus on the future of these important events through the lens of a new program recently released by the Film Festival Alliance.
And John, this is something that you have been working on for at least a decade?
Pretty close to a decade, yes. I'm very excited that a standard for film festival ethics and transparency has finally been released. It's been quite the slog, and we will talk about it. The new program will ask festival organizers to reveal important information about their events, from the number of submissions they receive to the number of films they program, and detailed information about their review and selection process.
And John, I know that you really want to get to this and you're very excited about doing this, but
Yes, I am.
before we do that, we really need to introduce our two guests that we have this week. So our first guest is Bears Rebecca Fonte. She is a transgender filmmaker, film programmer, and journalist. In 2001, she became the artistic director of Glyph Prism, the oldest film festival in Austin, Texas, making her the first transgender artistic or executive director of any major film festival in the world. Previously, she founded Otherworlds Film Festival and served as director of programming for the Austin Film Festival, which is going on next week as we record this, from 2012 to 2014 before coming out. Her sci-fi and horror shorts have played at 150 plus film festivals around the globe.
And Bears Rebecca is joined by Gray Rodriguez. Gray is the Director of Communications for the Film Festival Alliance, supporting and advocating for film festivals worldwide. With over a decade of experience, she has worked at festivals like Tallgrass, Bentonville, and Sundance, gaining hands-on knowledge in marketing, operations, and programming. Passionate about connecting with the indie film community, Gray loves exploring innovative ways to showcase cinema and is always eager to share her insights. I welcome both of you guys. I have known each of you for many years. I've worked with Bears Rebecca for almost 20 years. It's crazy. And Gray, I've worked with you since you were at Tallgrass. Honored to have you guys here today to talk about this very important topic, which you have been instrumental in ushering to fruition.
John, this really points out how long friendships we have in this film festival world and how important that is to all the work we're doing.
And how rarely people leave their jobs.
Well, they switch from one to another.
But this is one of the reasons we are doing this podcast, is because while the people who work at festivals never really change, it's the filmmakers change every year. And just because a filmmaker learns something this year, next year, it's going to be a whole new batch of filmmakers who don't know anything. And so by getting all this information out there in this podcast form, hopefully we're able to reach more filmmakers and they understand more about this industry.
All right. So, John, how did this idea of ethical film festivals develop? And what specific problems did it address?
So I probably got this idea about 15 to 16 years ago when festivals had I still have a Facebook group of film festival organizers, and people were complaining about scam festivals and being put in the category of scam festivals. And I first want to just say that there are scam festivals out there. There's just not a lot of them. There's some sketchier ones, but the scam festivals, there's just not that many. But anyway, I wanted to develop a way to separate legitimate festivals from the sketchier and scammy festivals. That was the first thing.
Define the word scam, though.
But so there were scam festivals that were taking money and not watching films and not actually programming films, or their whole festival was based on the idea that everyone gets an award, but you have to spend $300 to buy the actual statue or whatever. But they weren't legitimate festivals in which you submit, you are reviewed and juried, and you play in front of an audience. To me, that's what makes a legitimate film festival, that you're screened in front of a public audience of some type, hopefully one that pays to see it. So the initial idea was just to find a way to label festivals as legitimate. Then they grew out to this idea of comparing and contrasting the operation procedures of between events. I like to say that there's 4,000 film festivals in North America and there's 3,999 ways to run them. One person got the memo to steal from someone else, but they're all very unique and they're all run in very different ways. And so by having a way to compare data between festivals, it would give filmmakers the opportunity to make better decisions about where they may have wanted their film to go, or at least lay out the information that they needed to make more informed decisions. The flip side of that is hopefully it would allow festivals to see how other festivals are run. And so maybe they would adopt some of these practices that made more sense than the practices they were currently doing. And one of the reasons I created this Facebook group for festivals to talk to one another was I just felt that festivals needed to all play the same game, or at least in the same sandbox. And so this was one of those ideas to bring people and festivals together.
So why is it important for all festivals to play the same game?
Every year there's a new crop of filmmakers who have no idea about the complexity of the circuit and don't understand that every event is unique. And if they don't understand how festivals work and why we do what we do, then they're not going to feel supported. And if they're not supported, then they're not going to enter and the whole thing is going to fall apart. And I'm already seeing grumblings in Reddit and other boards in which filmmakers like, I can get more views on YouTube than I can through the festival circuit. You know, and that might be true for some films. The festivals offer more than just screening opportunities. It's community and meeting other filmmakers and talking to industry people.
And connecting to your audience.
Which is, I think, the most important part. I always tell filmmakers, don't look at your movie when it's up on the screen. Watch the audience and see what they're thinking about your movie. But I think it's really critical that festivals understand how each other works. Every year, there's a new crop of film festivals that show up. They're usually very small. They usually don't really know what they're going to do procedurally. And if they can learn from another festival, then that's a great bit of knowledge to have.
Yeah, I think these best practices for us are really a great starting block for those festivals that you're talking about that are just starting. But we're really giving our membership the opportunity as well to look at our best practices and evaluate their system and decide how they want to present themselves to the world and to filmmakers and how they want to share that information. So it gives these festivals the opportunity to provide more context about who they are, and then that gives the filmmakers more resources to work from that they might not get from a submission platform. We have qualitative questions and quantitative, so asking them things like, please describe your programming process. Let us know what a view means to you as a festival. And then also on the numbers, how many submissions are you receiving in terms of features? How many are you programming? So just adding more context to festivals that maybe aren't top of mind for you, because we hear a lot of filmmakers asking us, or certainly myself when I speak to them about how do I get into Sundance or TIFF, and not really realizing there's this really strong regional ecosystem full of festivals that may be a way better fit for you overall in your career.
Yeah, some of this information people get from just talking to other festivals through the Film Festival Alliance. So part of it informally has been happening for years. And I think what's important now is through the work of all of you guys, it's being formalized into something. So John, how did this idea evolve?
I think I showed up at a film festival summit. I think it was at Art House when we were running a festival sidebar to Art House Convergence. This is before we were more integrated into the event. And there's a panel discussion, and I said, I want to spearhead this panel. And I think Barris was actually on that panel. And we discussed this idea, and I had an outline of, at that time, there's probably 100 questions I was asking. It was way too much information. But it's what I thought in a perfect world was needed. I was proposed this idea that we should, as a group, come up with this standard, and then festivals who participate will receive some sort of badge as an ethical festival or a transparent festival or whatever we're going to call it. And that could then be used for marketing to say, okay, I'm an ethical festival. So there's a reason for you as a filmmaker who doesn't know anything about me to have more trust in submitting to my event. And it got some traction. There was a lot of, I don't want to say hate, but there was a lot of dissent.
A pushback when there was the first discussion of what might be in this questionnaire, I think, that's where it really began, was once you guys started talking about, well, what's going to be in this questionnaire? And for things that, for some of us, we wouldn't even think that would be problematic.
And I think this is one of the reasons it's taken so long, is just to get buy-in from everyone or a majority to say, oh, yeah, I understand now why this is important. I think there's a lot of festivals, especially bigger festivals, who don't want you to know how the sausage is made. And to peel back the curtain of how a festival is actually managed or run, it is giving up a few trade secrets, or possibly. And I think that a lot of small festivals and even some regional festivals, they're basically run by one or two people. And they're very proud of what they do, and they're very insular in what they do. And they don't necessarily want to share that information with others because they think that they might be competing with another festival, which I don't understand personally, because I feel like every festival is different. You're not really, even in the same city, if you're like in DC, we have two independent film festivals. They're both completely different from one another. They're not really necessarily competing. Maybe they're competing for audience, but I don't think so, because I think that the types of films that they program are so different. But that's something from the outside you don't see from the inside. So when you're working as a festival organizer, I can see how someone would think that by exposing my secrets, it's going to hurt my business.
For all the people who were running small festivals, figured it out as they went along.
Mhm.
And some of them were saying, like, why are you telling me how to do what I know how to do and I've been doing for all these years? And so the initial reaction is, I don't want to change, because nobody wants to change. But I think the goal is much more important than anybody's particular ego.
I don't think that we want people to change necessarily. I think the goal has always been transparency and just to expose how it works, and just some basic numbers would help. I don't think people really realize how many films are submitted to Sundance, and understand that it's not just submitting to Sundance. It's, are you part of a lab or part of one of their other experiences, in which case you have a higher chance of being accepted because you're a known entity, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. A few years ago, the statistic was to be a non-connected filmmaker to Sundance and to get a documentary feature in, you had a better chance of having naturally occurring fraternal twins. It was almost impossible to get a film in at that point.
But I think that's one of the perfect examples of what festivals were maybe afraid of. That number of, like, how many submissions do you get? There's festivals that get 4,000 submissions, and then there's festivals who get 300 submissions, and they didn't want necessarily people to know that they were only getting 300 submissions, because that
Sure.
said that they weren't as good. That somebody might interpret that as being some sort of judgment on that. Or if you're going to ask a budget of a festival, and then a filmmaker can see what the budgets of the festivals are, they might think, I'm not going to go to this one that has a smaller budget, even if it might be more appropriate for their film and more likely that their film will get in. So they were afraid of giving too much information out, because if you don't know what a filmmaker is making their decisions on, then you just are terrified that whatever you say is going to be the thing that makes them not submit to you. And in this time when filmmakers have so many choices and they don't know what the difference is between a ethical festival and a non-ethical festival, how are they making those choices? Where they're going to submit, where they're going to spend their $1,000 that they set aside for submissions, which disappears really quickly if that's what you're trying to do.
And I think it's important for them to think of this resource as like a great place to really challenge themselves to research and think about what their goal is. Again, we use Sundance as an example, but it's like, what is your goal if you did get in there? Why is that what you're after? And maybe reevaluating based on this research that you're doing, what are better fits? Do you just want to play at a lot of places? What audience sizes are you looking for? I think that will just give them a really great research tool to understand what the landscape looks like a little better.
And this is a sidebar, but I would agree on this one. I think a lot of filmmakers don't have a goal
Right.
or a plan when they submit to festivals. I think they just, I'm going to start submitting to a bunch of festivals, and they get on Film Freeway and they use it like a shopping cart, and they just add everything in and pay for it without thinking of a strategy of what's best for my film or what's
So
best
if
for
only
me
there
as
was
a filmmaker.
If only there was a book that would tell you how to do this job.
Yeah, okay. Enough plugging my books.
Amazing.
But
Plural.
books. But there are books, mine and a few others.
And I'm working on a new one.
Oh, excellent. Yes, that's right. But in order for filmmakers to make better decisions and to do better planning, I think that some of this information really needs to be out there. Sometimes it's buried in a festival's rules, or somewhere deep in their website that no one's going to be able to find. So the idea was if this is presented in a way in which is upfront, then filmmakers could make better decisions.
Also, filmmakers aren't going to film festivals' websites anymore. That's so rare. They are just going to Film Freeway, and you don't have to put certain things on Film Freeway. So what this would create is a way that filmmakers could go to centralized site where they can look at several festivals at the same time and be able to compare them across categories that are presented to you in the exact same way, in the exact same box. Oh, it's always going to be this. I know the third question is the thing that I'm really like. I made a documentary film, and what I want to know is, does this festival play documentaries? That might be many different places on many different websites. But if it's set up in such a way on the Film Festival Alliance website that it's always question 3 as to what are the genres that your festival plays, that's really helpful to a filmmaker to know where they can look.
Yeah, and it really challenges our membership and film festivals to not shy away from transparency. I think sometimes people are afraid that they'll be called out if they don't offer XYZ, but it is really about being as honest as you can be so that people could make the best decisions, and that's for better or worse. We do have some areas that are left blank if you are able to leave blank. If you don't offer filmmaker accommodations or you don't maybe have cash prizes, it's better for a filmmaker to know that than to arrive and find out those kinds of things. And so we're offering this space for you to be transparent, but also then have something to aspire to as well. Like now it's a little bit of a structure for you, these best practices for film festival organizers to really start thinking about the future for their festival and what their growth will look like and how they want to improve it for filmmakers. And it reminds me of a quote from John Gann. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but you're going to have to correct me because I always do it in the reverse. There's a film for every festival. No, I want to say it right.
There's a festival for
Come
every
on,
film.
Don. Come on, let's do it.
There's a festival for every film, but your film is not for every festival.
Right. Thank you. So you can learn that from this by doing research and saying, hey, maybe this one's not for me, but I just think it's going to be a really great tool for kind of doing that thoughtful research.
So, John, do you want to talk about how this actually will work?
Well, I don't know actually how it's going to be implemented. I do, but this is Gray's and Bears Rebecca's area to talk about. But I just want to say that through this very long process, almost a decade, I am incredibly grateful for the support of many people in this industry who have been supportive of this, including Beth Barrett at Seattle International, Leslie Raymond at Ann Arbor, Jeff Ross, who runs multiple events in San Francisco, and many others who have really helping to usher this through. When Beth first said she was into this, I was really happy because that's a very large, major festival. And to get that kind of support was really the wind to push this through for me. So that's great. But how this is being implemented, this is for Bears Rebecca and for Gray to tell you guys.
Yeah, and I'll say that I was on board with this idea from the very beginning. And I joined the board of directors of the Film Festival Alliance with this as my major goal, is to make this happen because it hadn't happened yet. And so Gray has probably gotten tired of hearing me complain about it not happening. So I'm super excited that we were able to come up with a way to do it that I think solves all the issues that came up over the last 15 years of thinking and talking about it, and also gives us a lot of room for expansion in the future, depending on how it goes and what we want to do with it.
And I have to thank Bears Rebecca for finally coming out of her shell. She's so shy and bringing this idea to us. It was hard for her. So I really appreciate that. But no, I want to make sure she's mentioned as like a huge driving force in this, especially at the Independent Film Exhibition Conference we had in the summer. She brought together a group in person to discuss this. And we really wanted to make sure as many of our members were involved in this, and even filmmakers really. I think another reason it took so long is because a lot of us are perfectionists and wanted it to be a quality resource. And so I'm very thankful for the team and the Film Festival Alliance board, who is incredible.
And a lot of us are filmmakers too. So we were looking at it, as I'm sure John was when he first started proposing it, looking at from what would I want to know as a filmmaker. And then the other half of my brain is saying, but I don't want to tell them that. But no, but I want to know that.
Yeah. I just think we've had a great team behind it, and we're excited to implement it. So publicly, it'll be available on the Film Festival Alliance website. We will have it embedded, and it'll be a searchable form, more of a gallery that you can look through. The way that you get your festival into the database is by being a Film Festival Alliance member so that the space in the directory is open to our organizational members. So we have small, medium, and large organizational members. And this is one of the many benefits of being a Film Festival Alliance member, but the placement is included. We will be providing each festival who's participating with a emblem that also comes along with a statement that they can place on their website that says that they adhere to these best practices for professional film festivals. And then we also have a lot of promotional assets that they'll be able to share both at their festival and on their social media, on their Film Freeway profile to really amplify that they are part of this huge initiative and make sure that filmmakers know what to look for when they're looking for festivals that are adhering to this best practices. And then we'll also have standard media kits for all of our partners, present company included. And yeah, we are just super excited. I also think that one really great word of mouth piece that I think will help this grow is all of the film festivals in our directory who are having festivals will be able to point their visiting filmmakers to this database and say, hey, if you're enjoying an experience, here's a really great place to start for strategizing where to play next. It's just creating just a better sense of community too between the festival and the filmmaker. That's our plan there.
I feel like it is going to open a lot of conversations between festivals in terms of what are best practices, because there's some things that maybe as a festival that you haven't even considered. For example, we're talking about, we're encouraging people to have the names of the programmers on a website somewhere. And maybe your festival has no names anywhere. And you're like, wait a minute, oh, wow, I never even thought of that someone might want to know my name. I don't know how many times I've submitted to a festival where it's dear info, here is my film. It just doesn't feel like you have any connection. And as a filmmaker, I'm going to feel much more inclined to go to a festival if I know who's picking my film and if they've written me a letter and it has their name on it, and then it might be more willing to recommend that festival, and I will definitely come back or send my next film to a place that I feel like I have some sort of connection to. It's a lot easier to have a connection to a person rather than an info address.
It would be nice just to see the names of programmers, only because I think filmmakers don't realize that there are some programmers that work for many festivals. And a lot of times if they see a film submitted to one festival and they love it, they're going to encourage you to submit it to other festivals in which they're programming because they think that's your film is the right fit for them also.
Also, if you've seen that programmer and you've seen what films they've programmed, you might get a better sense that maybe I shouldn't send that to that person, or maybe that's up their wheelhouse. I think that makes a difference.
I agree. I think that a festival that never has shown a horror movie isn't about to show yours just because you think it's brilliant. It's just not something that they show their audience. They're probably not going to change that. And the ethos of a festival doesn't necessarily change from year to year. Programmers like what they like and know what their audiences will come to see and what they need to feed to their audiences. And they also know what their audiences will not tolerate.
And I think that's an important part of that research process too, beyond this directory and beyond Film Freeway. I believe, sorry, keep plugging John, but John, I think I heard this from you first, that it's really important for you to look at the festival social media, look at their past programs, and really, before you spend the money, think about what they program and compare your own film to that to make sure you're not wasting your money, because you might be.
I hope that this initiative helps encourage festivals to put their past programs on their websites so that filmmakers can take a look and at least for the past 5-6 years and see the films that they've programmed so they have an idea of, oh, my film is like this film from 2 years ago and they liked it, so I have a better chance here. Or my film is like this film and it's not in any of these festivals. Maybe these are not the festivals for me.
And I'm sure really filmmakers would appreciate having their name on the website for 5 or 6 years, just as like a badge of honor, because we announce films that we're playing at festivals, and then the year ends and we go on to our next program. And then sometimes it's never mentioned again. And so if it lives forever, I mean, it's basically like giving it an award. You are awarding it by playing it at your festival. You're saying it is one of the top. That's why sometimes they're called competitions. You may not be winning $100 prize or $1,000 prize, but you are winning the fact that your film is better than enough other films that it's going to screen at the festival. And So I think that's exciting for the possibility of what we have on the website.
It's really important when you're trying to figure out what festival to go to see what they've shown in the last few years. Does my film resonate with somebody who would like that film?
I think it's important for other festivals when they're looking at the festivals that they want to emulate to be more like, or festivals that they feel might be their competition, to see what they are playing and go, oh, this one's showing this film, and I think I should start looking more at films like this. Or if it's somebody you think is competition, they're showing these films, and maybe I should start looking at kind of the opposite type of films.
Yeah.
And some of this is on the Wayback Machine, so you probably could find a few years back if you really were looking to
Well,
find that.
now you're looking for a technology that young people don't really understand how that works. Anyway, the Wayback Music. If you're 20 years old, way back, and they don't understand 2002, I think, what are you around then?
I was just going to plug FFA for a second when you're talking about that competition and comparing your festival to other festivals. It's really what we do at Film Festival Alliance. Is a large part of our membership is building that bridge between festivals and connecting programmers and connecting marketing directors and executive directors with each other. So once you become a member, you really realize it's not as much of a competition as you thought, and there's so much collaboration and opportunity. The opportunity to have jurors and panelists and really great networking opportunities for people organizing festivals. And yeah, I really hope people are inspired by each other's directory entries, but also if you're not a member yet, that encourages you to take a look at what that looks like, because it is such a huge network of people who, as we learned from our intros, like we all know each other somehow. We've seen each other on the circuit in one way or another. And so, yeah, I just encourage people who organize festivals to take a look at that as well.
If we're talking about the specifics of this process, one of the things I'm most excited about filmmakers having access to is a short description of the review process for both invited and uninvited or unsolicited submissions, i.e. sending your film in like through Film Freeway. That would be an unsolicited submission. And invited would be like, I went to Sundance and I saw a film I loved, and I went up to the filmmaker and said, I would really like you to send me this film for my festival. But most filmmakers don't know what your process is. How many times does a film get viewed? How long does a screener have to watch the film before they decide, okay, this is not for the festival? I'm going to make my score based on this. And how many levels are there? When does it get to the artistic director? Does it have to go through 18 people before it gets to the decision maker? Or is it this kind of festival that no, the artistic director watches every single thing that comes in, which is insane. But it could be possible at a very small festival. I try to watch at least 10 minutes of everything that comes in, unless two people tell me it's terrible. And that means scores of 3 or lower out of 10. Then I'm like, okay, I probably don't need to watch that. But in general, I'm watching something of everything because I'm always programming things that my screening team didn't like. And I think for a filmmaker to know that's part of the process, that can give them a lot of assurance about whether it's a festival that you want to give your money to and send your film to. Because you're talking about scam festivals and that there aren't many. But the reality is a lot of filmmakers believe that all film festivals are scams.
That is correct.
They think that we take their money
Yep.
and then just play the films that are made by the people we went to college with or the people who played the festival before. And there are some festivals that do that, and some of them are quite famous. But most festivals are not scam festivals. But I don't know why a filmmaker would know that if you didn't explain to them why you are not a scam festival.
I think that one of the reasons that most of us get into programming festivals is that we want to discover films that we haven't seen before. And we want to be like, oh my God, I didn't see this before. I didn't know anything about this. That's what kind of keeps us going. And I think that's something that most people don't know. That's one of the reasons we're here.
Yeah. And I think sometimes from what I read on Reddit, or a really bad Film Freeway review, or just someone really taking down a festival, is that sometimes people equate rejection with a scam because they feel like their film wasn't seen or programmed. And I think there is a lack of education around how difficult it is for programmers to reject films sometimes. They don't see the programming discussions where people are really fighting for something that just doesn't make the cut because of time and space. And so we could have a whole other episode about that. But I just think questioning why you feel like a reputable festival might be a scam and really examining your ego too, and thinking maybe my film just wasn't a good fit.
And I think that's what it is. It's not a good fit. I used to reject top scoring
Yeah.
films because they just didn't fit with the rest of the programming. And of course, I would have to call those filmmakers and let them know, by the way, you're not getting an invitation and it's because your film is almost too good
Mhm.
or it just doesn't fit in with everything else we're showing. Again, to what Bears Rebecca said earlier, I think that a really important part of this is to define the process and what is a watch. Every day on the Reddit board, I see people complaining I looked at my Vimeo stats and there was one watch for 5 minutes, and I'm like, there's a lot of festivals. That's all they're going to watch is 5 minutes before they make a determination whether they should continue going forward. But you don't know if that one watch was seen by 8 people in the same room or not. And so by defining how the process works for each festival, maybe that will diminish some of this idea of they're not really watching my film. Some festivals watch the entire film. Some festivals watch the first 10 minutes of features I'm talking about before they can make a determination whether or not it's the right theme, it's the right mood, it's the right whatever, it's the right production values for what they're trying to present to their audience.
But I will say that a 10-minute watch from the artistic director is better than a full watch from a screener that's down the line, because
Yep.
then at least you're getting to the person who makes the final decision. And at
Right.
least when I know that I was watched by the artistic director, then I go, okay, it didn't just get lost in the shuffle. It didn't
Right.
not reach the decision maker. So I'm very clear with people that say when a film gets to me, I'm the final person to say yes or no to that. And I know within 3 or 4 minutes if
Yep.
I'm not going to play it. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to be sure that you're not going to play it.
Oh.
But it may just be like, oh, I already have said yes to 3 films that are this exact same topic. And so
Right.
I don't have to watch that much of your film. But the screener doesn't know that, because the screener who's lower down and is watching less films or watching more films, but not the ones that are going to the top, they maybe don't know that there were 5 zombie films that were set in the upper Midwest during the winter. I'm only going to play one of those. So there may be 2 amazing films that are that exact same film, but that's not going to help you as a filmmaker. But at least I got to see it, and maybe I'm going to recommend it to somebody. You would rather have your artistic director, who knows that an artistic director at another festival, see a film that maybe they can make something happen for it.
And again, if festivals started putting all their catalogs online and filmmakers were actually looking at them and realized, oh, look at all the films about zombies in the upper Midwest in the wintertime, maybe they realize, oh, maybe that's not the film I should be making this year. Or maybe I should make it in the spring as opposed to in the winter, and set it in the South. So again, we're trying to provide information to filmmakers so they can make better and more informed decisions.
So what is next for this initiative?
We're still at the process now where we're getting a bunch of festivals to sign up essentially and be a part of it, so that when we roll it out, we're rolling out a large database so that it's useful to the filmmakers, because it doesn't really do a whole lot of good to say, here's the 5 festivals that have agreed to do this. But that'll happen very soon, Gray.
November 1st, it will launch. It will go live. And we will, in the meantime, in the background, be reaching out to those who've completed the form, giving them that emblem, and really working on that messaging to make sure as many filmmakers are aware of this resource as possible. And then hopefully it'll encourage festivals who haven't participated to get on board and be a part of this, because when you look at those best practices, they're really just things you can put on your website to oversimplify them. And I think that, again, is a great starting block for transparency and for sharing with filmmakers as much as you are comfortable. And so we are just simply providing that information and saying, here's what we consider best practices. And that goes for one other piece I wanted to mention that is part of the intake form and the directory is accessibility and asking about captioning, which comes up a lot for filmmakers, asking about accommodations, and just making sure that, again, if you don't have that at your festival yet, it's not meant to shame you or force you into anything. It's just to simply provide that information and context so we can all make informed decisions about attending or participating. And so just asking if you require closed captioning or audio description, any sort of requirements that you have, or if you provide compensation for filmmakers to make those accommodations, we want you to be able to share that.
And that's a good example of an area of festival logistics and management that we know a lot more about now than we did 10 years ago.
Yep.
And if these standards were put together 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been a component, or maybe we wouldn't be highly suggesting that people all include captions. But now we do. And that's one of the ways I think that this will change over the years, is that eventually we might decide that you really are not being an ethical festival unless you are doing captions. That's the bare minimum. Just like we're saying the bare minimum is you should tell somebody whether a film's being watched. Like maybe it's going to be the bare minimum eventually that everybody needs to provide captions. And if the festival is not going to be responsible for that, then the filmmaker has to know that they're responsible for it.
And it's a lot easier than it used to be.
And to bring it back to Film Festival Alliance, like part of our role is to educate and provide tools and resources for festivals to be able to provide those accommodations much easier, or at the very least for us to connect to people who can help those organizers make a better festival experience for everyone. So again, like it all works together. One other thing I want to say about the best practices, we do hope they evolve. We hope that we receive feedback and notes. And as this grows and the landscape changes all the time, we know this is our first step. And so we hope it can grow and improve for everyone so that we are offering the best information before people are submitting films.
Yeah, if anybody thinks this is not enough, or if John says this is only 16 of the 99 questions I had in my original form, I think the idea was like, we just want to get it started.
Yes.
And we want to start saying, if you want to be considered an ethical festival, here's what we think that means in the bare minimum. And I have very strong feelings about where the future of this could go, because I'll be the first one to say every other sort of, I don't know, you can't be a lawyer without applying to the legal board. You can't practice medicine. You can't be an accredited college without getting accredited. So what does that mean? I don't know. I don't know what that means for film festivals, but I'd like to see something in the future where there is some form of accreditation. Then a filmmaker can be sure that if they're going to submit to a festival, they know there's certain things that this festival is meeting, whatever those things are, and that it will be somewhat policed, that if a festival is not doing that, then they lose their badge.
Is there a process for that, for policing?
Not yet. And right now we don't have
Manpower?
I was not going to say manpower. We don't have the person power.
Person power.
And
right.
we also don't have a system by which you could make that, who makes that decision.
Right,
and
right.
Not everybody is a member of FFA. And I don't even think FFA has enough of all of the festivals in America yet to really say we speak for all festivals. I think you have to get to the point where we are the organization that everybody knows is the film festival organization. And you can't really be talking about film festivals without knowing, oh yeah, there is an organization that oversees festivals.
Yeah.
And once that happens, then you can talk about making a few more stricter rules, which I know Greg doesn't want to talk about. It terrifies her because it would be more work for her.
That's not really my issue. More so, I think
or me.
It's a larger discussion about, I'm like, who watches The Watchmen? Who's telling us? Who's deciding what's good versus bad? I think it's very complex, and I would hate for us to jump into that prematurely without a lot of standards in place.
I would agree, but the reason we founded the Alliance was to create a way to professionalize the industry, and we know that's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to evolve and take time. But this is one of those tools that will help the organization to accomplish that goal. We had talked years ago about accrediting what is a professional programmer, what is their basic job description, or whatever, and eventually FFA will get to that. But this is just one of many programs that FFA is going to be implementing over the next few years that will help to really professionalize this. And it's not just a ragtag group of film lovers who just create festivals because they want to, but they are creating festivals that are meeting a certain standard and are addressing a certain need.
Yes.
And I think I want to respond to something Bart said last month on this podcast, that it's a banner time for film festivals right now because there's so much content out there. And it's a banner time for filmmakers because there's so many film festivals out there. That's not necessarily true. And one of the problems with a place like Film Freeway is that filmmakers now have too many options. And And I think it was an easier understanding of what a professional festival was 15 years ago
Yep.
than now, simply because there's so many more festivals out there who are redefining what it means to be a festival for good and for bad. And I think we no longer have a group understanding of what that means. So we have to get back to that. But in the meantime, it's a lot harder for filmmakers to decide what to do with their film. And it is a lot harder for a good film festival, a festival that's trying to act in the best practices and putting the filmmaker forward first to get their name in front of a filmmaker as someplace they should submit. Austin is one of the largest LGBTQ populations in the world, let alone in America. And I can't tell you how many times I meet queer filmmakers and they're like, oh, there's a queer festival in Austin? And number one, I'm like, of course there is. But it's like the fact that they can't find that out because there's just so many other film festivals out there that they're not thinking, obviously, I should go down this route to figure out which festivals I want to submit to. There's just too many festivals out there, and there's too many films out there, honestly. The access to cheap equipment and the access to post-production services that are free has made an access that everybody has an iPhone and they can make a film and everybody can go to film school and claim that they have a film degree. It's not necessarily a good thing. I think that it's probably making it a lot more possible for people who are great filmmakers to get into the industry, but it does make it harder for film festivals to really find probably the best films that is right for their audience because they aren't even being submitted to them. But if there's only 15 festivals in America, like there was at one point in time, you better believe they got every film that was shot because there was only so many films shot on 16 millimeter that year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the prints were expensive.
Exactly.
So let me ask you, how is this being promoted? Because if there's major stories in Variety and say the New York Times or something like this, then film festivals will be pushed to do this and filmmakers will be looking for it.
Yeah, we hope so. We hope there's a lot of momentum when it's launched. I'll be meeting with Movie Maker on Thursday to discuss this.
Great.
There's Rebecca, you'll be receiving information about that as well. And we're really hoping as many outlets that want to amplify this, but really are first going to be relying on our memberships to do that and on these press opportunities, of course, but really making sure that their alumni and their filmmakers are aware of this resource as well. When you think about all the people who are members of FFA, they have large email lists of filmmakers. And so we're hoping to really use that to create the momentum and to almost peer pressure people who aren't involved to get involved because this is such a great thing for everyone, we think.
More festivals to join the Film Festival Alliance because you can't get that badge unless you are a member.
Right.
And then that helps with the other ideas of getting more people together and creating more professionalization because more people are sitting in the same room talking.
And I think one of the key components of this, and I know you guys are working on it, is to get Film Freeway to have a searchable button that says ethical festivals. Yeah.
Yes.
Just like Dave, you can choose the top 10 festivals or whatever they have, or you can choose the ethical festivals, and which is a goal. It's going to be a little difficult now that the Film Freeway has management.
Yeah. In the meantime, we're going to be
or a monopoly.
We're going to be encouraging our members to put it in their header image, that emblem, and just really trying to make it as visible as possible. And so hopefully everyone is interested in doing that. We think it is very important.
John, let me ask you this. As having worked on this and thought about this for a decade, is it close to what you imagined, and how do you feel that it's actually going to happen?
Listen, I am incredibly grateful to Gray and Bears Rebecca and the rest of the committee and the FFA to finally launch this thing. It has been a labor of love, and what I feel from 15, 20 years ago has been a necessity for this industry to really bring festivals and filmmakers together in a meaningful, data-driven way. And so I am incredibly grateful for everyone who's worked on this, and I am grateful to all the festivals who are going to participate in the initial launch of this. I think this will only grow into something much bigger and much more important and impactful. And sometimes things are created and they happen right away, and sometimes it takes a long gestation. This took a little longer than I expected. but it's happening. And so that's very exciting for me. And it was one of my big goals when I first got into festivals is like, how do I disrupt festivals? And one of it was exposing data or sharing data. And this goes a long way to doing that. So I'm very happy. So again, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
So-
starting the process.
Having said that, do you want to answer some questions, Jen?
Filmmakers? Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's question time. Gray and Bears Rebecca, every episode we pull some questions down from Reddit and answer them for filmmakers. So these are the questions from this week. The first one is, have you ever told another festival, perhaps in the cover letter, about your film selection to other great festivals? And I feel like, yes, when you get into a festival, you should be updating your Film Freeway page or your website, or both actually, with as much current information as possible, including where you premiered at or premiering at, and some of the larger screenings you've had, so that festivals who are looking through your information can see this. It's not going to hurt your chances, and it might not even help your chances, but at least it gives programmers more information about what the trajectory of your film is. There are a lot of festivals that program based on the programmings of other festivals and the trajectory of a film. And there are some festivals who shy away from that because they want to, again, discover their own thing. But listen, filmmakers, you have got to update your Film Freeway information all the time. Every time something has changed, you should update that page. It takes 3 seconds. It's not that big of a deal, but it is information that festivals do look at.
I absolutely agree with that. Update your Film Freeway page. I think that it's a different thing if you're emailing a programmer, because we get so many emails that you're just creating extra garbage in our mailbox. And I think the only time is if you are a feature, then you tell us where it's played right when you send it in your cover letter. And then if you world premiere, that's probably a good thing to know. But for shorts, the answer is I rarely care where it's played, how many times it's played. But if it's played a bunch of times, then maybe the more you email me, the less likely I am to program it. Number one, because you've irritated me now by sending me 25 emails.
That's a very important thing that filmmakers don't understand, that you can irritate people by too many emails.
Yeah, if I'm remembering your film for the wrong reason, that's not
Or
a good
your
thing.
name.
But also, if you tell me that you've gotten into 25 film festivals, one of my thoughts is if I play this film, it's probably unlikely that you're going to come because you've spent all your travel money.
Yeah.
And you might be tired of coming to film festivals. And you may have been already out for a year with this film and you're on to another film. So for me, there's also you can open up more opportunities for other filmmakers. So maybe I don't want to give a spot to somebody who's already played at 55 film festivals.
Okay, second question. My short film recently got accepted into a few festivals, but I can only attend one of them. That's too bad. How can I promote my short in these places I won't be attending?
Has some thoughts on this.
Yes, Bears has some thoughts on this.
So I'm just going to be a little negative, and I'm going to say the real answer probably is nothing. There's pretty much nothing you can do to promote your short film unless you're there. As someone running a festival, I don't have time to promote your film by putting out your postcards and putting up your posters. And also, I have a bunch of other filmmakers who maybe are there, and it's my job to make sure they have an audience. So that sometimes, especially for features, if you know that you've only sold 5 tickets to a film, all of my energy is going to that. And the reality is, shorts programs sell themselves. So I'm not really worried about promoting those. It's more about what you're going to get out of a festival. And if you aren't going to go to the festival, sending postcards and posters and anything like that is not really going to get you much out of that festival if you're not there.
I would agree with you because to me, the point of attending a festival is to meet other filmmakers and meet your audience. And so if you can't do that, it's almost a wasted opportunity. Yes, your film is going to be seen by a few hundred people at a screening, but it's not going to further your career at all. No one in that audience is going to go, oh my God, this is the next Tarantino. I'm going to follow him forever and ever. As you're budgeting for your film and you're budgeting for your festival submissions, you should also be budgeting a travel budget for attending as many festivals as you possibly can. And that should be part of your strategy. What can I afford to attend? Can I afford to attend lots of festivals if I drive to them? What festivals are within a 3-hour driving distance, 5-hour driving distance of me so I can make it, as opposed to stuff clear across the country that's going to cost you hundreds of dollars to attend? On the flip side of what Bears, Rebecca says, I think that you can't, after you're accepted, you can ask the festival, can I send you postcards? Would you put them out? And if they say yes, then great. And if they say no, then no. I get the constraints of organizing a festival and putting all this information out. You can also, especially if it's a feature, I would look into doing paid social media targeting the area around the theater. That could help draw some interest into your film, into the festival itself. And I think the festival would be grateful for that too.
Record a Q&A. If
Yeah.
for a feature,
Yeah.
offer to record a Q&A with them, because that might get people to know you. You might know you're the next Tarantino, even if you're not standing.
This is going to just add to what Rebecca just said. I am now encouraging all the films I'm working with that they do a recorded Q&A and have it available as in a 10-minute and a 20-minute version that is available to festivals that they can't attend. So some festivals will tack that on to the end of the screening, others will not, but at least it's available and it gives a more personal touch to your film if you can't be there.
And a controlled one. I think that's really quite good. And the other thing is, if you have somebody in your crew or somebody who's in the film that could go to that festival, that's at least something. And if you have some representative there, that can help you.
Yeah, the director doesn't have to show up at the festival. It can be an actor. It can be the sound person. It can be anyone who has worked on the film. Yeah, because there's lots of people who want to go to festivals, not just the director.
And I want to add a couple things that I used to be the director of marketing for Tallgrass, and I thought sometimes short filmmakers couldn't come. And some things you can do that I think make a huge difference are you have an opportunity to make a really good impression by making sure your files are labeled correctly, that you're providing stills that are helpful for promotion, that you're not going to be there, but you're giving the festival all the resources they need to do their job. That makes you an outstanding alumni in my eyes, and you are creating a relationship with them. Even if you're not there, you become alumni of that festival. So I would just make sure you're, still keeping up with them in that capacity. And then I also think if it's the feature or if it's some sort of short that's got a special interest attached to it, or there's any sort of way you can tie to a community partner, the team at the festival is always looking for those opportunities, but it's even more meaningful when a filmmaker reaches out. So even if you can't be there, if you know about a certain group that could help drum up interest or ticketing beyond just that paid marketing that John suggested, I just have noticed after the virtual festivals that came from 2020, like those festivals that are doing that kind of marketing for themselves or outreach, it really goes a long way. And for me as the marketing director, it felt like I had another teammate promoting that shorts block. And so I think that's something you can't, if you have the time, it's very helpful and it makes a great impression.
And as you finish a film, trying to figure out who those people are, those communities are for all the festivals you're sending to could really be helpful for the process.
But yeah, like I said, remember your alumni after that, whether you go or not, and just keeping those relationships is really important.
Next question, John.
Okay. My film won an award in an Oscar qualifying category. So first of all, congratulations. I was advised to register on the Academy website, and this person's in Europe, in their home country, which will support them with promotion. What else should they do? First, let's talk about what Academy qualification means. So the Academy accredits a handful of festivals around the world in specific categories, and films that win the jury prize in those categories at those festivals are then qualified to be considered for the Academy Award that year.
Right. They're not getting it. You're just qualifying.
You're just qualifying it. You're part of a very long list of films. You basically bypass the qualification of playing in Los Angeles for a week at some of these specific theaters or having mass distribution. You get put on this very long list. Let's say you won documentary short, you're probably on a list of close to 500 films. But you've made it to that point, which is fantastic. And congratulations. It's a huge thing. You're like the cream that's risen to the top.
It'll help you raise money for your next.
But what do you do next? Like, how do you become the 5 that are actually nominated? And a lot of that is PR. It's people working behind the scenes, making sure that the film name and your name is out there. It's about making sure copies of that screener are available to decision makers, Academy members, et cetera. Because I know people who sit on different committees of the Academy, they are inundated with films, and the ones that kind of stick in their mind are the ones that sort of are repetitively told to them over and over again. because the Academy will then take this list of 500, let's say, films and whittle them down to what they call the first short list and then the second short list, which is about, 15, 20 films. And from that, they come up with the nominees. So I would suggest hiring a professional who has worked with emerging filmmakers in developing some sort of multi-stage strategy. If you really feel that your film is Academy worthy and then you feel you could actually walk away with a golden trophy, then you should spend the money to do. You should also maybe consider bringing on an associate producer or executive producer who has ushered similar films through the system before. Because it is a system and you do need someone who knows what they're doing. You just can't just show up and make it happen.
You need a rabbi.
You need a rabbi, that is correct. So that's my suggestion. It is an investment. If you have a small budget film and maybe you're just happy with the honor of being an Academy qualifier, that's fantastic. It's so huge. I wish for this for some of my films. Maybe that's enough. But if you want to go further, then you need to bring in the professionals to help you get there.
And you need to raise more money.
And you probably need to raise a lot more money, correct? And then again, weigh what that opportunity means. If you were a nominee, what is the cost benefit for that? What do you think that's going to do for your career? Versus if you win, what is that going to do for your career? I know people who have won Academy Awards for short films that have gone nowhere. And I know people who have parlayed that into massive careers. So it's really about your talent and how you're going to further it too. So there's a lot to weigh there.
So we get to the last question here.
Sure. How soon do fests watch films after they're submitted? Has anyone had an experience that took a long time from the date of submission to get a full view? I submitted almost a month ago to 7 festivals and I haven't seen much action on Vimeo. I feel like a broken record. First of all, we have to say this again. Vimeo stats are notoriously unreliable, so much so that they're mentioned in their own FAQs. A lot of festivals try to watch films as they come in because they want to keep on top of it. But there are a lot of festivals who their submission period might be 6 months and they might not have screeners lined up at the very beginning of the process. They're just open a long time because they want to have the opportunity to get as many films in as possible. So there's no one really to watch your film for maybe the first month or so of the process. Be aware of that. And then again, you don't want to get your film in too late, like at the extended deadline, because at that point, programmers have already watched all these films and have mentally programmed out their favorites already. And so I think
it's so much harder near the end.
Oh,
because
of course.
You're right. I want this one. I've got room for one more.
Right. Are you going to be that one more?
I've already said yes to that. I want to play this zombie upper Midwest film.
My God, do you want that?
And then another one comes in. It's like, now I'm being compared to that one. But maybe if I'd watched this one first, then the other one wouldn't go.
So yes, it can take a long time for a film to be watched by a festival. Again, you can't rely on the Vimeo statistics at all. Just because it was watched doesn't mean it was watched by one person. It could have been watched by a committee of 3 to 10 in the same room at the same time. Maybe they only watched a short part of it in which it didn't register that it was watched, because maybe that festival only watches a few minutes to make a determination whether or not it's the right fit or the right style for them. So again, in general, submit as early as you can. First of all, it's much cheaper to submit it in the beginning than it is at the end.
Absolutely.
And the sooner you get your film in, the fresher the eyes of the programmer, in which they are still open to the possibility of 4 films, as opposed to at the end, in which they've already, again, mentally have made decisions, or maybe have actually made decisions. And at that point, their eyes are tired. And so you might have a great film with a really small flaw, but at that point, they're just so tired that small flaw just explodes into something massive that they can't get over.
And you could have the first of the left-handed zombie films from.
For myself, I like to submit to the first deadline because I think if you open the submissions and films come in right away, I think those filmmakers look a little thirsty. And I was like, okay, this film's probably been around like for a while. Obviously, somebody's going to wait till the last deadline because they just finished the film, so it's brand new. Because why would you not save a bunch of money?
And again, you're much fresher. It's like, we're in a new season. First thing I look at, I'm happy, it's sunny, we're going to watch movies. And that attitude might not be the same 3 months later.
So with that, I think we are done with this episode, Bart. What are we
Oh.
talking about next time?
Next time is going to be incredibly special because next time we are going to have a live show. So if you wondered what John and I look like or want to see us or want to scream at us
Oh,
or want to do
no.
anything, you can come to the Sound Unseen Film Festival in Minneapolis, and we will be recording this in front of a live audience, and we will be taking your questions. So isn't that a good reason to go to Minneapolis to see this festival?
Minneapolis in November? Yep. I think it's a great opportunity. Actually, it'll be the end of fall, beginning of winter.
Will you sign copies of your book, John?
I will sign, if you bring a copy of
I was
my
gonna
book,
say
I
that.
will gladly sign it. Oh my God.
And by then, my book will be out on how to make films
Oh.
with mobile phones, smartphone cinema, which of course bears will hate.
Oh,
No, I love. Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't be giving everybody those tools.
Uh,
But I do enjoy. I think I've seen some great films made on an iPhone.
so, well, I'm excited for the live show. We're going to be, the entire show is going to be questions from filmmakers and fans. No subject is off limits. Bart and I will answer brutally honestly, as we usually do. We may be joined by some other festival people there too, which would be great. But that's our plan, is to answer your burning questions about festivals and programming, etc. We are happy to do.
and a huge thanks to our great guest. Gray, thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here and bear such a shy person to
She came out of her
come
shell.
and spend time with us. For us, we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having
And
me.
Carrie Sheen, thank you for making this all work and make everything sound so wonderful.
And remember to subscribe to Frankly Festivals at franklyfestivals.com or on substack.com or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Also, remember to send us questions. You can send them through the franklyfestivals.com website, or we just might scrape your question from the Film Festival or Filmmakers subreddits, which I love to do. By the way, I'm on there multiple times a day answering lots of questions because I really think it's a great resource. So if you're a filmmaker, even in a festival, you should be on these subreddits. They're really good. They're usually pretty good. Anyway, a huge thank you to you for listening and contributing to this podcast. And of course, I will leave you with these wise words, which we've already said before, because Gray made me say them earlier, but there is a festival for every film, but every film is not for every festival. And with
So
that, thank you.
Wow.